Hello. Yeah, I think we're going to have to start 2 minutes late just because some journalists are just arriving.
Sorry, you were...
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. And a very warm welcome to the PA offices here in sunny Victoria today. Delighted to be hosting this event on behalf of Demos for its Future of Public Services Taskforce. And absolutely delighted to be welcoming Polly Curtis, Chief Exec of Demos, and also the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Liz Kendall. My name is Amanda Kelly. I am a partner here at PA, leading our work in local public services. And I also have the privilege of sitting on the advisory board for the Demos Taskforce. So I get to see firsthand just the important contribution that Polly and her team at Demos have to the important debates around our future of public services. And some of you might not know that PA was formed during World War II to help improve productivity in the munitions factories. With those who usually worked in the factories away fighting at the front line, we inspired and then trained a new generation of mainly female workers to succeed in the most advanced technological facilities of the day. And our commitment to supporting people into work continues today as well, including through our annual Springboard programme that provides students from disadvantaged backgrounds with consulting and technical skills, and through our apprenticeship programme that we launched last year. And I think we've got a couple of apprentices in the, yes, all at the back there, that we launched last year. And if you ever want to be reassured that the future is bright, you just need to speak to some of those brilliant young people. So supporting people into work is an issue that is very close to our hearts here at PA. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Polly, who's going to be our host for the event. So pass over to you. Anyway.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Polly Curtis. I'm the Chief Executive of the cross-party think tank Demos, and it's a pleasure to be hosting this. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces in the room as well. So thank you all for coming and battling London transport to get here. Thanks also to Amanda for that very lovely introduction. It's great to be working with you on Demos's Future Public Services Taskforce, which we launched last year in response to the challenges seen in our public services at the moment. Bear with me a second. We're also delighted to be partnering with Big Society Capital, Bridges Outcomes Partnerships and SIPFA on this programme. At Demos, we pride ourselves on bringing together the brightest minds and the deepest thinkers on policy and politics across the political spectrum. So I'm really pleased to introduce our speaker, Liz Kendall, the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, who will be giving her speech on how we can tackle the problems of youth unemployment. After that, we're going to take some questions from journalists, and then we're going to bring the audience in as well for questions. So do be thinking of things you want to ask the Shadow Secretary of State as you go. But first, I'm just going to take 2 minutes to set a bit of context of the moment we're in as the country finally emerges from the shadow of the pandemic and with the really unsustainable pressures we're facing in public services. There really is an urgent need to have a plan for the future of public services. And the good news is that away from Westminster, an exciting new public service paradigm is being sketched out. From Barking to Wigan, all over the country, there are local leaders and professionals who have been experimenting with new approach to public services that breaks with some of the old dogma of markets and managerialism and offers something new for citizens where they are. The bad news is we've had no national public service reform agenda for over a decade now to kind of bring those things together and create systemic change. And this is critical because there is no path to reforming our public services and tackling structural challenges such as the youth unemployment problem unless there is a clear vision from the centre. And in our view, that should involve delegating power to citizens and communities and professionals across the country. Demos's Future Public Services Taskforce is developing a public service reform strategy for central government, which we will publish later this year. And this strategy could provide the basis for the first cross-cutting public service reform white paper since 2011, something that is desperately needed. That must include reforming our current approach to youth unemployment. So despite overall levels of unemployment falling in recent years, the number of young people outside of work and education has remained stubbornly stable. We clearly need a new approach. And in our research, we've found that the current system is overly fragmented and very difficult for everyone, including young people, to navigate. It excludes people from getting support. People are turned away from job centres. And because work coaches administer benefits as well, trust is undermined between citizens and job centres. In response, Demos has designed what we call a universal work service to replace these fragmented services. And it is a proposed new public service designed to support both individuals and employers in partnering to offer employment support, skills and services. But really importantly, it also needs to tackle building up people's social capital and providing mental health and well-being as well. So that's what we think at Demos, but we're all here today to hear from our guest, who I'm now delighted to introduce. Liz Kendall is Member of Parliament for Leicester West and Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. And I'm particularly excited as this is her first proper major speech in this brief. So please welcome me in joining Liz Kendall.
Thank you, Polly, and thank you, Demos, for hosting me today, but also the work you're doing on public service reform. I have been passionately committed to public service reform throughout my time as an MP and before I became an MP, and I really look forward to working with you on this subject in the months and years ahead. Now, this week, the Tories' 7th Chancellor gives his second budget, the last before the general election. Speculation swirls about what Jeremy Hunt will say and whether it will appease his divided, chaotic party. But whatever Mr. Hunt announces, it won't make up for 14 years of economic failure under this Conservative government. They claim the economy has turned a corner, but they've driven it into a dead end. Rishi's recession, with GDP per capita down in every quarter of the last year. Our economy smaller now than when the Prime Minister first entered Downing Street. The biggest hit to living standards on record, the highest tax burden for 70 years, more food banks than police stations, and our public services on their knees. People in this country don't need statistics to tell them the dire state we are in, or that they're paying more but getting less. And as Rachel Reeves, Labour's Shadow Chancellor, has said, we know what's led us here. Austerity choking off investment, Brexit without a plan, a disastrous mini-budget that sent interest rates soaring and mortgages rocketing, with ordinary people paying the price for an ideological gamble which swathes of Tory MPs still believe in. But there's another reason why the Tories have failed on the economy, and that's because they have failed on work. The official unemployment rate is low, but this isn't because there's a record high in the number of people actually in work. Indeed, Britain is the only country in the G7 whose employment rate hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. The reality is, increasing numbers of people are leaving the labour market and no longer even looking for work. This Parliament has seen the highest increase in economic inactivity for 40 years, and the number of people out of work because of long-term sickness is at an all-time high. 2.8 million people not in work because of poor health. The over 50s, mostly women, struggling with bad hips, knees and joints, often caring for elderly parents at the same time. Young people with mental health problems, many lacking basic qualifications. With all these problems, far worse in northern towns and cities, places the Tories promised to level up, but which have once again borne the brunt of their economic failure. In places like Blackburn, Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Hull, including these hidden unemployed, takes the official unemployment rate from 5 to 20%. This is unacceptable, and it is such an appalling waste. It's a waste of individual potential, as hundreds of thousands of people who want to work are written off and denied help to get back on their feet. It's a waste for British businesses who are desperate to recruit and who need the talents of everyone in our country in order to grow and succeed. And it's a waste of taxpayers' money too, with health-related worklessness now costing an extra £16 billion a year just since the pandemic. For all the Tory claims about being tough on benefits, over the next 5 years, there will be 600,000 more people on sickness and disability benefits, and these benefits will cost an extra £33 billion. That is more than our current day-to-day expenditure on defence. The Office for Budget Responsibility says the sustained rise in health-related worklessness is holding back growth and living standards while putting ever greater pressure on the public finances. Yet all we get from the Tories is more of the same. More of the same half-baked programmes which fail to tackle the root causes of the problem. More rehashed, re-announced schemes, and more of the same empty rhetoric on benefits when their failure to get to grips with welfare is there for all to see. But this Tory future is not inevitable. We can choose a different path, and under a Labour government, we will. A path that follows in the footsteps of the great reforming Labour governments before us, Attlee, Wilson and Blair. Labour governments who championed full employment and acted to bring it about. They understood the key to increasing growth and opportunity and to tackling poverty and inequality is creating more well-paid jobs, supporting more people into employment and improving the quality of work too. Now, I have always believed the benefits of work go beyond a pay slip. Having a job and providing for your family gives millions of people across Britain a sense of dignity and self-respect. Good work is good for mental health. It can bring pride, fulfilment, and purpose. And for millions of women, work offers freedom and independence too. The Labour Party was founded by working people for working people. And that core belief that Labour is the party of work is at the heart of Keir Starmer's changed Labour Party today. And the truth is, for the last 14 years, the overwhelming focus of the Department of Work and Pensions and the succession of Tory ministers leading it has been on benefits and the creation of universal credit. Under Labour, the Department of Work and Pensions and job centres will do what they say on the tin. We will have a relentless focus on helping more people get work and get on in their work, and on making workplaces healthier and more productive places to be. Labour's Back to Work plan is built on investment and rooted in reform. It starts by tackling the root causes of worklessness, so no one is excluded from the opportunity and security that comes from having a good job. We know a healthy nation is critical to a healthy economy. They are two sides of the same coin. So we will drive down waits for NHS treatment, creating 2 million more operations, scans and appointments, and recruiting 8,500 more mental health workers paid for by closing unfair tax loopholes. We'll ensure back to work support is tailored to individual and local needs. We will overhaul job centres to end the tick box culture, and will devolve employment support to local areas, because the man or even woman in Whitehall can never know what's best for Leicester, Liverpool and Leeds. We'll create more good jobs in every part of the country, in clean energy and through our modern industrial strategy. and we will improve the quality of work and make work pay with a genuine living wage by banning exploitative zero-hours contracts and strengthening the rights to flexible working that are so vital to family life. Now, I'll say more about our back-to-work plans for the over 50s in the coming weeks, but today I want to focus on our offer for young people. Last month, we learnt that over 850,000 young people aged 24 and under are not in education, employment or training. That is 1 in 8 of all our young people. More than 200,000 are workless due to ill health, a number that has doubled over the last decade. As the Resolution Foundation has shown, much of this is driven by poor mental health and low qualifications. When half of all mental health problems start before you're 14 years old, we have got to intervene earlier on. So Labour will provide specialist mental health support in every school and walk-in access in every community, tackling one of the key drivers of worklessness before it takes hold. Second, we will deliver 1,000 new careers advisors in schools underpinned by good quality work experience, so our young people leave school ready for work and ready for life. Third, we will overhaul skills with new technical excellence colleges and by reforming the Tories' failed apprenticeship levy, which has seen apprenticeship starts for young people fall by a third. Our new growth and skills levy will help young people get the skills they need, including offering a second chance at basic skills and pre-apprenticeship training if they didn't get the right qualifications at school. Fourth, we will provide new employment advisors for young people in our Young Futures hubs, offering joined-up, specialised help and support, because the old one-size-fits-all approach simply won't cut the mustard when it comes to tackling this problem. And we will overhaul access to work for young disabled people who want to work, so they know what equipment, adaptations or personal support they'll get before they start work, giving them the confidence to take the plunge. This is our commitment to young people. We value you. You are important. We will invest in you and help you build a better future with all the chances and choices this brings. But in return for these new opportunities, you will have a responsibility to take them up. Under our changed Labour Party, if you can work, there'll be no option of a life on benefits. Not just because the British people believe rights should go hand in hand with responsibilities, but because being unemployed or lacking basic qualifications when you're young can harm your job prospects and wages for the rest of your life. And this is not good enough for our young people or for our country. Unlike the Tories, we will not let a generation of young people go off track before they have even begun. Our goal is every young person, earning or learning, with help to build their skills and careers and to manage and improve their health. This is how we will grow the economy, transform opportunity, and give everyone a stake in our country's success. This year, the British people face a choice, and the sooner the better, in my view. Another 5 years under Rishi Sunak, with more stagnation, low growth, high costs and worklessness, set against the backdrop of never-ending Tory cycle drama, or a future with Keir Starmer, with a long-term plan to get Britain building again, get Britain growing again, and get Britain working again. Founded on the rock of economic stability, led by a changed and united Labour Party. The public know it is time for change, and Labour stands ready to deliver. Thank you. Thank you very much. For the non-journalists in the audience, we will have lots of time for questions and discussions, but forgive me for taking the journalists first. I think we've got Paul Saul from the BBC. Hi. Peter. Oh, I'm so sorry,
okay.
Peter. I do apologise.
So, Liz Kendall, you say a life on benefits will not be an option under a Labour government. You say that there'll be a responsibility on people to take up the opportunities that you've set out in this speech. So will you compel people to work if they can, and if so, how?
I think young people will be chomping at the opportunity for these, for the work, training and other things that we are offering. I mean, most young people I speak to say they want to work, but they need experience to get a job, and they can't get a job without experience. But I do think it is important that these new opportunities go hand in hand with the responsibility to take them up, because of the reasons I set out. There is lots of evidence about the long-term impact on you if you're unemployed when you're young, that can have a real impact on your future wages and job prospects. We don't want that for our young people. I believe these new opportunities will really transform young people's life chances, and I know they'll want to take them up. Chris. Hi, Chris Hope from GB News.
That's right, Chris Hope from GB News. Liz Kendall, your first major speech as Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary. 6.2 million people claim UC. Will that number go up or down at the end of a 5-year period in government?
Well, you know, many people on universal credit are in work. They are desperate to build a better life for themselves. My focus is actually on reducing the number of people out of work who are economically inactive due to long-term sickness, a record high. And that is why our plans to drive down waits for NHS treatment, to get people the skills they need, is so important.
That will fall, that number.
We know it will. We will bring that down. I don't want to see a situation where we're spending £33 billion more in 5 years' time for people who want to work, but they're not getting the right support. I think it's an unforgivable waste of this government, of their life chances, for our businesses and for taxpayers, and we're determined to change it. Natasha Clark from the BBC, behind you, Chris. Sorry.
I've got one. Hello. Natasha from LBC. Hi. Can I just go back to the previous question on sanctions? Does that mean that under a Labour government, those sanctions, that if people do not take up that work, will continue? And obviously you just mentioned the soaring bill that you're about to inherit. Some experts say that you need to spend more money to get those savings, but you're not going to have the money for that, are you? These tweaks are really just not going to touch the sides.
I don't believe mental health support in every school, 1,000 new careers advisors, overhauling the failed apprenticeship levy, specialist employment advisors in our young futures hubs. You might think that that's a tweak. It's not. That will offer a real change for young people. And the reason this is so important is if we don't tackle the root causes of why people are not in education, employment or training, if we don't give them a second chance at skills, it's not just bad for them, it's bad for our economy and country as a whole. You know, I hear this a lot about Labour's plans. They're not going to make a difference. You need to spend a lot more. I am under no illusions about the state of the public finances after 14 years of this government. But for my constituents, 2 million more hospital appointments, 8,500 more mental health workers, and that support in every community would make a massive difference to their lives. And I'm proud to go out and campaign for that. Ashley Coburn from The Mirror.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
You promised at the Labour conference, that you would introduce a bold national child poverty strategy. We will see the details of that before the general election. And can you have this bold strategy while keeping the 2-child limit on benefits?
Tackling child poverty is a personal priority of mine. Before I became an MP, I ran a charity called the Maternity Alliance that campaigns for better rights and services for pregnant women and new parents. And I currently chair Feeding Leicester, which is the programme to end hunger in my city. So you will hear more about our plans for tackling child poverty. But we have already set out how we will make work pay, how we'll ban those exploitative 0 hours contracts that so many people face, how we'll have breakfast clubs in every primary school so parents can work and so kids start school with hungry minds, not hungry bellies, how we'll create more good quality jobs through our clean energy strategy. We know these are the things that will make such a difference to family life and that are really the long-term way we're going to help tackle child poverty in this country. Rafe from the FT.
I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that the Chancellor would deliver his budget on Wednesday. You also noted that a lot of your policies will be funded by tightening various tax loopholes. If the Chancellor decides on Wednesday to pare back the non-dom tax regime or move forward with tightening the carried interest loophole for private equity executives, what will happen to your proposals if that goes forward and he uses those measures for tax cuts?
I'm not a big fan of speculating on hypotheticals, but if the Tories do change their position on these areas, it will be an abject humiliation for them because they fought against it for months and months. And what it will show, once and for all, is that Labour is winning the battle of ideas. Claire Elliott from The Mail.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Can I just press you a bit on what you mean by there being no option of a life on benefits? Could you do something like withhold benefits from young people who refuse to work? And could I also ask you about your colleague Angela Rayner? Do you think she still has questions to answer about the sale of her council house? Thank you.
So, as I said, I believe young people will be chomping at the bit to take up these new opportunities. But if genuine opportunities for work and training are turned down, it will be at the discretion of work coaches what the response will be, as is the case now. And as for Angela, she has been very clear that no rules have been broken. I think Angela is an incredible champion for working people in this country. She is leading our calls for a better, fair deal at work, and I fully support her in that. Chris Smythe from The Times, I think. Ben,
Yes,
I'm coming to you next.
Chris Smythe from The Times. I mean, you talked about the cost, 30 billion on incapacity benefits. You add in disability benefits, can you get to 80 billion? Do you accept that if you fail in the reform agenda you set out here, it will destroy the public finances and leave Labour no chance of increasing spending on other public services as it ultimately wants to do? And just to follow up Chris's question on overall benefits, are you saying that your ultimate aim in the first term of Labour government is not to see this big increase in sickness benefit spending, but to actually see sickness benefit spending fall?
I mean, the people who have failed on these issues and who are putting unbelievable pressure on the public finances are the Tories. I mean, the OBR is crystal clear about this. You know, not only is it harming our prospects for growth, not only is it harming living standards, but it is one of the fundamental reasons why we're seeing this ever higher pressure on taxes. I'm not going to speculate about whether I'm going to fail in 5 years' time. I intend to succeed. It's the Tories who have failed on this issue. And I do not want to see 1 in 5 people who are currently out of work due to long-term sickness who want to work. They're going to get chances and choices under the Labour Party. I am absolutely clear about that, not just for them, but for our businesses and for the public finances as a whole. Ben Gunn from The Guardian, and then I think that's a lot.
Thanks. Hi, Ben Quinn from The Guardian. Liz, what is the evidence base that significant numbers of people are willingly choosing an option of not undertaking or not taking up work? Because there is an implicit suggestion in what you're saying there. And doesn't the Labour government have a responsibility to push back against vilification of people and stereotyping of groups of people?
I think in all my answers today, Ben, I've said that I believe young people are desperate to have chances and choices to work, get skills and training. And we know that of those people who are out of work due to long-term sickness, at least 1 in 5 say they want to work if they can get the right help and support. And that is my message to people. We will offer those chances and choices. I think it is important to say people will have a responsibility to take those up. They know, I mean, many people in my constituency they're working hard. They want to see everyone doing the same. And I know from speaking to people in Leicester, but right across the country, what they want is a chance, and that is what Labour will deliver. Thank you very much.
Liz, do you want to come and take a seat here? I'm going to abuse Chair's privilege and ask a few questions of my own, if that's all right, and then we're going to open it up to the audience, bring lots of people in, because I know that there's a lot of people here who work in this area, care about it really passionately, and have lots of expertise to share as well. So I've got 3 short questions that really go through the kind of different levels of blockers there might be to reforms of work services. So one focusing on central government, one focusing on the role of communities, and one on business as well. So in everything you're saying and all the work we've done, one of the things that mitigates against the kind of reforms you're talking about is the silos in the system of the state. What will Labour do, what would the Labour government do to kind of break down those silos and make the system work better for those young people who you want to get to into work?
I think it's actually quite astonishing that job centres don't currently have any duties, for example, to work in partnership with the NHS, which is what we know we need to do if we're going to tackle mental health problems. And so I want to see that change. I really believe that devolving more power and responsibility to local areas will start to help make that happen. I was recently in Manchester looking at their Working Well initiative, where they are really joining up health support, childcare, employment support based around an individual's needs, because they have more responsibility. I think about my own city in Leicester, where we have almost 67,500 people economically inactive. Now, our needs are actually quite different from Manchester in some ways. We have got a lot more people out of work because they're looking after families, whereas there's a higher proportion of those with long-term sickness in other parts of the country. And that's why I really mean, the man or woman in Whitehall won't know best what's happening in local areas and what their needs are. So the devolution aspect is really important too.
Yeah. And one of the things about getting into the local areas is the role that communities and the third sector and other partners can play in that. What do you think the potential is there for creating more roles for all the parts of the system?
So I think that there's huge potential. Again, and you'll forgive me if I often talking about Leicester, but that's, my paid job. So I know in parts of Leicester West, the actual community hubs where they really are getting the young people much more involved. They are coming in it might be for sport, it might be for other activities, but when they're there, they're helping to start to provide some sort of advice, signposting to where they might get skills, help build their confidence, and they can reach people in some ways that the public sector often can't. So that's why I think it's really important that as part of this devolving support, we really make sure we can use those community organisations that have got the best reach to the people who need help most.
And you talked a lot about the responsibilities of young people as well as the help and support that they can receive. What about the responsibilities of businesses to support this whole process and perhaps to have better employment practices and those kind of things for young people?
I will answer that question. I think the first responsibility is actually on the government. I mean, the people who've shirked their responsibilities is actually this government. If you look at, I think this issue has had far too little attention so far. The fact that we've got 1 in 8 young people not in education, employment or training, I think is a shameful situation in this country. Businesses definitely have a role. Keir and I went to 3 bridges to Siemens, where they are repairing Thameslink trains. And it was really interesting how important they saw flexibility in getting people into the jobs and keeping them in their jobs. And we met a man who had a real problem with his leg. He'd actually ended up having half the leg replaced. He, because of Siemens and the flexibility and support they came, he's back in work now. and he knows he would have been written off without them. And we met a woman who's brought up 3 kids. She's now caring for 5 elderly relatives. She'd been out of the labour market for 20 years. She said if she'd known about that sort of flexibility earlier on, she would have come back to work within a couple of years. And this is also linked to the really big issue of our productivity problem in this country. We want people to be into the best possible jobs, using their skills to the full. That's good for them, but it's also good for the economy. So businesses definitely have a role. Let me just finish on this point. What was really interesting is they're actually looking to relocate some of their train manufacturing from Austria to this country, to Goole in Yorkshire. They want to create 250 new jobs. And I asked them, are you talking to and involving the job centre? And they said no, which just to me just about sums up the problem. You know, the Department of Work and Pensions is like that. This is a point my colleague Ali McGovern makes, is the HR department of our growth mission. You know, we've got to get the jobs in the places that need them, and we've got to get the people who need their jobs into them. And the job centre and our public services are vital in putting all of those pieces of the jigsaw together.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to turn to the audience now and take questions in threes. There's some roving mics, so I'm just going to take the first 3 hands that came up. Gentleman at the front, women behind you, and gentleman on the right in the mustard jumper.
Yeah, thanks, Polly. Thanks, Liz. It's Simon Parkinson. I'm Chief Exec of the WEA, the Workers' Educational Association. And Liz, thank you for agreeing to come up to Leicester and looking at some of the work that adult community learning and Job Centre Plus can do together, because I know that's a strong theme. Could you say a little bit more about breaking down that silo? You mentioned the silo between health and Job Centre Plus, but maybe young people, 19 to 24, no qualifications. You know, what role can adult community learning play in your mission on this?
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. My name is Grace Duffy. I'm from Bridges Outcomes Partnerships, one of the sponsors of the task force. I really enjoyed and recognised what you said, Liz, about the need for truly effective interventions to be tailored to the individual and the place, and what you talked about, the intersection between health and employment, and that kind of duty to work with the NHS. So Bridges, delivers these kinds of flexible and tailored services. And one of the problems that we often come across is actually the sharing of data between different parts of government, and indeed with the VCSE sort of delivery partners. So just interested in what you had to say about that kind of sharing of data, and perhaps actually the sort of long-term tracking of outcomes, because I think there's a lot of hidden underperformance. It's probably even worse, actually, a lot of the work support which goes on at the moment, because they're really only tracking very short-term outcomes to get into any job, instead of actually a long-term transformational change in that person's career.
Great question. And on the right, please.
Thank you. I'm Ollie from Mind, the mental health charity.
Hi, Ollie.
Great to hear you talk about good work being good for mental health, and I think that's a really important distinction of good work. But many disabled people might feel a bit concerned about the talk around responsibility and potential link to sanctions and a kind of wider system or harsher system that doesn't get mental health. We at Mind have called for a commission of disabled people to look at the assessment criteria and kind of redesign that assessment system. I just wondered if that's something Labour would consider, and how more widely you plan to kind of restore disabled people's trust in the benefits system.
Thank you, Ollie. So you've got 3 questions there from Simon on adult community education, from Grace on data, and from Ollie on the idea of a commission of disabled people looking at the assessment criteria.
Okay. I'm going to start with Grace and the data, because actually this is on Friday I had a long discussion with my City Council about our levels of economic inactivity, and we have some very broad sort of headline figures about where the different groupings are, but we don't know what age for some of them, we don't know what skills level, we don't know, are they looking after children, are they looking after elderly relatives, do they have MVQ level 2 or 3 or not, do they have ESOL needs, do they have mental health problems, do they have physical health problems, you know, above all, I am a practical person. I want to know, what do you need and what do we have to do to help? And unless we share that data, we're never going to get this right. Now, it's very interesting in Barnsley and South Yorkshire, they're really trying to start sharing that information between the Job Centre, the NHS, HMRC and others, because it's, you know, as a person who's worked in policy all my life, I want to base it on reality, and so I think that's very important, as is following people over time. Only 1 in 6 people ever escape low pay. You know, that is not good enough. So we want people to get work and get on in their work and progress. And I think having that data to look over time is very important. On mental health, this really is a really serious issue that we need a serious national conversation about. I'm really passionate about intervening earlier on. I'm very worried about the issues that many young people face. And there is very, very clear evidence that having a good job is really good for mental health. We know that if you're in good work, you know, your relapses can be cut by 1/3 or even half. That's better for you, it's better for the NHS, it's better for taxpayers. So this idea, and some parts of the country are trying to reshape health services so that support on training and work is part of giving care because the evidence is so strong. And I think that you're raising an issue here about lack of trust amongst people, fear of the job centre, and I want to change that. I want to make sure people know they will get the right help and support at the right time, in the right way. And I've always believed that you won't get services right unless you involve the people who actually use them. So that's a real commitment for me on that area. And on Simon, on adult education, you know my mum's a massive fan of the WEA and University of the Third Age. And, you know, it's in today's world, you know, there isn't a job for life. You are going to have to keep learning and getting new skills. You know, we have, I think it's 11 million adults who lack the basic digital skills they need in this country. You know, it's just, and that's not because people can't do that, but they need that support. So I think adult education learning is really important. But again, the needs, there will be similarities. It's not like totally different, but in Leicester or Barnsley or Blackpool or Manchester, we have to look at specifically what the needs are, and I want to make sure there's genuine lifelong learning, because that's the key to a better life.
Interestingly, on that point, we're facing kind of 2 big kind of shockwaves to the workforce over the next 10 years. In net zero, the transition to net zero, which will affect a lot of manufacturing areas, and also in the AI changes that will affect how lots of people work. How is Labour thinking about those big set pieces?
As a progressive politician, I'm not sort of into bring-backery, like bringing back some world that no longer exists. My view about as a progressive is we can't stop change, but we have to help people deal with that change. And skills and education, I think, is absolutely vital. What we need to do is, you know, join up our plans on clean energy, on technology, and make sure that people have got this, are equipped to deal with those changes. I believe that is possible, but you've got to have a long-term plan to do it.
Thank you. I'm going to take 3 more. Oh, God, loads of hands. Lady at the front here, gentleman, and the 2 first gentlemen in the centre row, please.
Thank you, Liz. Fiona Aldridge, West Midlands Combined Authority.
Oh, hi.
Getting more young people into jobs is a key priority for mayors up and down the country, often responsible for kind of key urban areas where this is a growing issue. And particularly given the financial challenges that any new government will face, then integrating employment, skills and health, as you say, will be key to tackling this issue. Could you tell me something more about how a new government would propose to work with those mayors and how they might empower them more to address this challenge?
Brilliant. So,
Hi, thanks, Liz. Aidan Sims from AKG. We deliver a range of employment, health and skills programmes across the UK, and really interested in your point on devolution. So we see some great examples. Obviously, Greater Manchester is a good one that you cited around the Work Well programme. Some of the work that Fiona and the team in West Midlands Combined Authority doing some interestingly impactful work. But I don't think that's the case in every local area, and I think there are varying capabilities from area to area. So how would a Labour government support that transition, and what would the role of central government be over that period of time? Thank you.
Thank you. And Sir.
Thank you. Morning. Stephen Evans from the Learning and Work Institute, and we're also co-chairs of the Youth Employment Group, which is a coalition of charities and others working on this stuff. I kind of wanted to, you mentioned sort of young people getting the basics. I kind of wanted to pick up on some of that. So you mentioned the digital skills number. There's 9 million adults across England with low literacy and numeracy as well. And our current trends are going to take 20 years for all of them to get help, which is kind of probably slightly too long, I would contend. But one of the challenges often is that if you've got a culture in the job centre network that says get a job as quickly as possible, do you get the time to do something now that might help your long-term employability so that the job centre isn't a revolving door? So just interested in that trade-off. And I just wanted to push a bit on Polly's point about employers as well, or follow on from that. Because one of the reasons that youth apprenticeships are down 300,000 is because the government has said to employers, pick any apprenticeship you want, and employer-led systems, and they've picked apprenticeships for older people and people who are getting degrees. So how can we influence? Lots of employers want to do the right thing, but they're faced with this sort of alphabet soup of initiatives, and they're making their own decisions. How do we influence employers to do more of the things for the examples that you were talking about before?
Brilliant, thank you so much. So we have a question from Fiona on how you'll work with mayors, Aidan on devolution, and then the issue around the revolving door and presenting that, and a very good question on employers' responsibilities as well.
Yeah. So how I've been really impressed with obviously the mayors that I've met and seen and worked with about how they are, as they say in Greater Manchester, doing things differently to get a different result. Now actually some have had many years to build the sorts of relationships that they need. But for example, again, in Greater Manchester, they saw that there was a big gap in talking therapies for people who wanted to get back into work. So they've commissioned a new talking therapist service specifically for those unemployed who want to get back into work. They're working with local mental health services and providing this sort of, I'd almost call it a sort of brokerage where they are helping local businesses think about flexible working and doing things in different ways to help people with mental health problems stay in work, because often your condition can be fluctuating, but also get people into work. It's a sort of, we'll help you deal with issues with your current workforce, but will you also take new people on? I think the challenge there is how you offer that for the small and medium-sized businesses. That's a really, most of us work for SMEs, so that's a real issue that I want to work with businesses on the future. I want to learn from them, as well as say, look, these are our objectives. It's up to you how to deliver. We've got to be clear about the outcomes that we expect, because it is taxpayers' money and we're responsible. But I am much more in favour of giving a lot of freedom for local areas to meet that in the way that best suits their local needs. And it is true that not all parts of the country have combined authorities or the mayors, but there's still more that we can do. I certainly think, if I think about the skills base within Leicester, we would do things differently to meet our population's needs. But I wouldn't know unless I'm the MP that not only is our biggest manufacturing base, it's not just textiles, it's actually food manufacturing, but for the jobs of the future, we have a big push to create better paid jobs in the space sector. You know, I was about to pick up my phone, but for once I don't have it with me. The sat-navs on our phones, there's a huge opportunity to create those jobs. And in Leicester, we are building low-cost satellites, manufacturing jobs. But when I went around to visit our brilliant space park, I noticed, you know, there's a lot of people there from London, from Berlin and New York. I think, where's my kids from New Parks? I want my kids from New Parks there. So what we've done is I took all my secondary schools into the space park for a takeover day. So they were flying drones and doing computer-aided design. They were seeing the job opportunities of the future. Space isn't all about people in suits, you know. And that is the sort of thing we need to build locally. So I think we can do that in local areas, even if they're not combined authorities. And Stephen, finally, on the sort of basics and digitals. God, I mean, if I think of all of the things that we need to do and how long it will take on the current trajectory, I have to be an optimistic person and glass half full. And that's why I want to start young. Because I think we can prevent so many people becoming neat. If we look at that apprenticeship levy, okay, one of the things we need to do is to also make sure that, you know, if you didn't get your GCSEs or your A-levels, you need those basic skills for life, okay? And maybe you could retake at school, but maybe if school didn't work for you, we need a different way to get you back on the right track. And our apprenticeship, our reformed apprenticeship levy, the new growth and skills levy, will be able to do that. And I think about a conversation I had about the levy with the chief exec of Sainsbury's last month. I think they had £13 million put into the apprenticeship levy, but they only spent £1 million because it wasn't meeting the needs of their workforce. And something that isn't working for such a big, important employer. I want to get my hands on that for young people, but also for adults throughout life. We will only get this right if we work with businesses, the businesses that exist now and the businesses of the future. Joining this all up, I mean, it is a huge challenge. It's a huge cultural challenge within the DWP to think like this. I mean, I want to be in the situation where the first place people go to get employees is the job centre. I mean, that just isn't the case now. Look at Siemens. They're not even talking to the job centre. That's crazy. Let alone joining up with other public services. But I am hopeful for the future, and I'll say why. You know, my lifelong background really has been in health and social care. And when I speak to people within the NHS, they are looking at the pressures, and they actually know that good work is good for health. So I'm under no illusions about how much pressure they're on, but they know long term our ICS's integrated care system, one of their key priorities is meeting the social and economic needs of a local area. That is a key that we need to unlock and charge through the door, because if you have mental health problems, it's harder to get work. And if you're in work and you've got a mental health problem, you're more likely to lose work. It cannot be beyond the wit of man or, again, woman to put that right. And that is what I'm absolutely determined to do.
With 1 minute to go, I'm not going to risk another 3 questions, I'm afraid. So that we do need to draw to close. I know that you've got a hard stop. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing your thoughts here today with us at Demos and with the audience. Thank you to the audience for coming and sharing their expertise and such brilliant questions. So just to please join me in thanking Liz Kendall. And thanks for the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is that yours?
Yes, it is. Yeah.